Okay, so in this session, we are going to discuss Salesforce integration with the Okta as an auth provider to access the Mule API, right? Uh, so, I mean, I will recommend if you want to really understand this topic or this video, then you should first watch that OAuth explanation video to understand how OAuth works, how OAuth dance work, and what all flows OAuth 2.0 has, and then understand how uh, how we have configured the Okta as an auth provider, right? And then if you watch this video, you will able to understand it better, really, right? So in this session, what we are going to do is, it is just extension of previous session. Okay, so where we have our Salesforce, right? Then we're going to have Okta, right? And then we have Mule API, right? Something like this. Okay, so this guy Salesforce want to access or call a API in the Mule, right? So this is my API, right? But this API is protected with a proxy API. This is my proxy API. Okay, so this proxy API provides the security to our main API, or our API is basically calculator API to the calculator API, right? Which means it validate the jot token. If the request that has come to this proxy API, if it has valid jot token, it will let the request to access the API. If it's not, then the request will be refused, right? So what's going to happen is, in what we are going to see is, Salesforce, before Salesforce call this API, right? This API, it has to connect to Okta, right, to get the access token, right? Now, to get the access token, there is another story that you can understand in the Okta video, right? It has to perform full auth dance, right? So, and we will configure the code flow, right? So the entire auth dance will be performed, and if everything goes well, then Okta will give you a access token. And what kind of access token? It will give you jot access token, j jot access token, right? This access token will have all the details like the scopes and the signature and all other claims that we have configured here in the Okta, right? So if everything looks good, then the Salesforce will invoke this API. Okay, so when Salesforce will invoke this API, it has to send this jot token with the in the request. Okay, and in previous session, Salesforce directly use the URL of the API, Mule API, right? But now Salesforce will use the this proxy API URL, right, which is HTTPS, which is secure. Okay, once this API get the request, right, in this API, I hope, I mean, you have to watch the previous video, right, to understand how we configure this API. Okay, so this API will validate the JOT token, right? So how the JOT token is validated, we have discussed, right? So it will validate the signature. Okay, signature with the public key, right? So if the signature is valid, then your request will go to the API and API will be invoked and API will send a response back to your Salesforce. Okay, so this is what we're going to discuss in this session. Okay, and so we are going to configure Salesforce and everything else is already configured. In the Mule API, I just added one simple thing, right, to make my to make my proxy API from HTTP to HTTPS that I will show. So here we are. Yeah, so let's first configure the Salesforce. Go here. Okay, so here first we have to create the auth provider. Okay, click new, and then from here we have to select OpenID connect, right? Name, calculator, Mule API auth. Okay, suffix is okay, consumer key. Okay, now we need these details, right? Now to get these details we have to log into Okta. I will go here, your org, and then I will go to admin. I hope I can log in directly. So it is asking for the authentication token. Just give me a second. 55982 1. Okay, right, so if you remember, right, so this is the authorization server that we configured, right? And this is, if you see, we have configure our scope here, right? Cal underscore add, and then these are the claims we added, right? And then in the applications, let's go to applications, and this is the client or the application that we configured, right? So we are going to use, we will use the same client to access the API, right? And we tested, the last time when we discussed, we tested this thing from the Postman, but today we are going to connect with the Salesforce. So consumer, oh, this is that consumer client ID. Yep, client ID. Go here. Control-V. Client secret. Go here. All right. Authorization endpoint URL, token endpoint URL. Okay. For these details, we have to go to our authorization server, and I think if I click here, yeah, go here, and then the authorization endpoint. Actually, why I can take it from here, or I could take it from the Postman as well that we configured, right? Authorization URL, authorization endpoint. token endpoint, right? And user info URL, that's not required. Token issuer default scope, this anything else? I think nothing else is required. Click on the save. Okay, so this is the auth provider. So this is how we have to configure the auth provider, right? Now if you remember from the discussion, right, there is a concept of the callback, right? So this is the callback where your auth server will send the code, and then the same URL will be used to send back the token, right? Jot token, right? So to for this to work, right, I also explained this, right? When your code request or the token request go to the auth server, your auth server also validates the redirect URL, right? So this redirect URL need to configure in the authorization server. So I'm going to do that. Where it is? Yeah, here it is. And that configuration will go in the app. Sign in redirect URL, add another URL, say here control V, right? That's this good, and click on the save. Okay, so this is good. I don't think we need to do anything else here, but we'll figure it out. Then named credentials, here it is, right? So let's here it is our credential that we created in the previous session, right? So let's edit this. Okay, so first I have to change this URI URL, right? Because in the previous session we used the plain HTTP, right? Now we are going to use the, and this was URL that directly access the API. Now I'm going I want to use the URL so that my request go through the proxy. So I have to use the URL of the proxy. So I will go here. Okay. Okay, so this is URL for proxy, and we have to say https colon this guy. All right, here named principal, and then here we will select auth 2.0 auth provider, right? If you remember, this is we just now configured in the auth provider. All right, now the scope, right? So in scope we have to select this guy, call underscore add. So this is the scope that is used by our API, and this other scope we have to use so that Salesforce can use the refresh token, so that it calls the refresh process as well, right? Now this value can be different for different auth providers. So for Okta it is offline underscore access, but for Azure or some other auth providers it may be refresh token or something like that, right? That you have to check. Okay, so I think here we are good too. Pending. Yeah, so let's click on the save and see what happens. So now you can see that pending status has changed to the authenticated. It means this is successful, right? So my now named credential is using OAuth 2.0. Okay. Let's, no, not this guy. Developer console. And in developer console we don't need to change anything, because, and that is the advantage or use of using the name credentials, right? So I don't need to change anything here, because code is still using that name credentials, so, but I can still update my auth provider and other details without updating or changing the code, right? So we don't need to change anything here. Let's see if it works or not. Click on debug, open execute window, and click on should work, right? Okay, execute. Here another another log. Let's see. Debug. Yes, so we are still able to call the API, right? But this time we call this API through the proxy URL using the HTTPS, right? So if you see here, this name credential was used, right? Log is saying, and the endpoint is HTTPS proxy, right? And my proxy is configured to authenticate the request with the JOT token. Let me show that as well once, just for the refresh. Right here we come here, and let me where I need to go, access API manager. Okay, policies. Here's my policy, right? If I click on go and click on edit, right? So this is configured with the JOT, right? JWT validation policy. So it will validate the JWT policy, right? And if it's able to validate, if it's working, it means Salesforce is calling this API after getting the JWT token from the Okta, right? Now there is one thing that I have done to make this working, which is I have converted this API from HTTP to HTTPS, right? So in the previous session when we discussed, right, this guy was selected HTTP. Now I make it HTTPS by selecting this, right? Now for that I have configured a TLS, right here, TLS context, right? Now let me show you how I created that TLS context. I go over here and I have created a, in my sandbox obviously. Okay, so I created a secret group, right? And inside this secret group I configure a self-signed certificate. Okay, so this one, right? And then the TLS context. Okay, and I'm referring this TLS context in my proxy API, right? So this is the way basically to convert a HTTP API to HTTPS, right? And I have to actually make this HTTPS. Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's it. So this is how we can configure Salesforce to connect or to communicate with the Mule API, right? And I mean this example was very simple, right? And the API is very simple, but it does not matter even if you are calling a Mule API, right, which is doing $1 million transaction, you still may have to call the same way, and you may still have to secure it same way, right? So that's it, I think, for this session. Thank you.